We're getting close to completing the framing for the studio. The next section we're going to construct is a bridging point between the inside and outside of the roof. All the rafters lay across the two walls, except for this point here. We're actually putting blocks that are twice the length.
You come and go like a monsoon rain. You hide and show like a lightning bolt. You have it all.
In this video series, I take you through the process of how we created this backyard art studio. It features 3 large windows and glass doors to allow natural light to fill the interior. It also includes an outdoor covered awning space with a hardwood batten privacy screen. We chose to use passive house design systems in the construction to make the most of the year-round weather conditions. In the previous episode, we continued to finish off the framing of the roof by adding bracketing to our rafters and installing more pre-painted blocks that'll be the anchor point for the plywood sheeting we'll be adding later in the project. We also prepared and installed the posts and beams that hold up the roof over the open section on the side of the art studio. In this episode, we'll be installing the last of the roof rafters and completing all the framing elements to finish the roof. But first I need to remove the temporary scaffold we used that supported the post and beam as the concrete setup from the previous episode. To help keep the 2 beams secure and parallel, I'm temporarily clamping a rafter over the top of them. Until we complete the framing for this section, there's nothing really holding the front and back beam and post together.
Back up the drive a bit, could you see what this is? This is a part of it all. Over and over, injustice to injury. This is a part of it all. Could you hike back to it, fight with it, sit with it? This is a part of it all. Ask around, be aware, make peace with what is there.
All the 190 by 45 framing material I used for this scaffold is going to be used as blocking for this section of the roof. This is another way you can help cut costs in your construction. After the rain eased up, I installed some framing brackets to help tie the beam into the main part of our structure. Although I've used 2 12mm bolts to anchor the beam into the wall frame, I wanted to add additional bracketing to help mitigate against the heavy winds we have in our area and help ensure that this point stays connected for the life of the building. The rain's too heavy to do any construction, so I'm prepping the blocks we'll be needing for the completion of the roof frame. The temporary rain shelter I constructed has been invaluable for keeping the project moving during these wet winter months. After the storm passed, I returned to adding blocks to the edge of our roof structure. These blocks are needed to hold the outside edge of our marine ply sheeting. Because our roof is slightly larger than 4 sheets of marine ply, I'm adding these edge blocks to both sides of the roof. I'm attaching them with the same 14 gauge screws we've been using throughout the structure. I'm adding a screw either end of the block through the rafter and 2 screws through the vertical block that's already in place. And because these blocks will be exposed on the inside roof, I've painted them the same green as our rafters. Once all the blocks are complete on the lower side of the roof, I repeat the process on the high side of the roof with the same dimension blocks, which is 70 by 45. Here you can see how the scaffolding I erected earlier is making this task a lot easier than having to work off a ladder. Later in the process, when we're adding the marine ply sheeting, you'll see how these edge blocks enable us to use the full width of the sheet on the layout. The inside edge of the marine ply sheeting gets fixed to the blocks that we're adding through the centre of our roof in between the rafters. The other reason for adding the 2 rows of blocks through the centre of the roof is to stop the rafters twisting over the 4-metre span. My process for installing these blocks is to use the large clamp to add compression to the rafters, holding the block in place, and then add 2 of our heavy 14-gauge timber screws. I then add another 2 screws to the other side of the block, but these are drilled in on an angle. This is where it's important to use a pilot hole to ensure the screw stays in the correct alignment and doesn't poke out the other side of the block. With the block fixed in place, I remove the temporary piece of timber on the top of the block that's been holding it in alignment with the roof plane, reposition the clamp and repeat the whole process.
Now everything that has been don't matter no more. We've burned it. All those whirlwinds can't touch us no more. We've earned it. Everything that has been don't matter no more. We've burned it. All those whirlwinds can't touch us no more. We've earned it.
With the roof frame complete over the enclosed part of our structure, I start the process of hanging the rafters in the section that'll be open on the side of the studio. We've pre-painted these rafters as we did with all the timber material that'll be seen on the final build, so we're taking extra care to protect the paint as we position them on the beams.
Your eyelids and perfect lips got me rushing pen and I'm so lit. Like lilies you open, the fragrance goes to my head, my darling. I get everything that has been don't matter no more. We've burned it. All those whirlwinds can't touch us no more. We've earned it.
The first step in this installation is to copy the wall and block layout from the existing rafters onto the new rafters. After making sure they're perfectly aligned, I transfer the layout onto one of the new black rafters. By transferring these marks with my set square to the other 2, I'll ensure that all the blocks line up for the sheeting that we'll be doing later on. I then start fixing the rafters onto the beam, working from the outside into the middle. I add the same pre-painted blocks as we've used throughout the construction of our roof frame. These blocks are 554mm long, which creates a 600mm centre for the rafter layout.
We're getting close to completing the framing for the studio. The next section we're going to construct is a bridging point between the inside and outside of the roof. All the rafters lay across the 2 walls, except for this point here. We're actually putting blocks that are twice the length, where the outside and the inside wall have a kind of hinge point. So we actually double the size of the blocks. The idea is to add some more engineering strength on this hinge point between the roof that's on the open area and the undercover roof, which will help avoid uplift in the wind. Because this whole open roof is a bit like an airplane wing with its flaps up. We get really strong winds from the north. So I'm trying to add as much reinforcement into this structure so we don't get any uplift and the roof peeling off in a big storm. I've pre-cut and pre-painted all the pieces necessary last week, so today we're going to be installing them.
I want to take you back through the process of how I prepared these double-sized blocks. The first step was to cut the blocks to the appropriate length. Although this should be a formula cut, due to variations in our timber and the framing process, I'm custom cutting each block to fit perfectly in place. The next adjustment to be made is to make the double-sized block fit the existing plane of the roof where the sheeting will be attached. I use a packer to establish the block is sitting 5mm too high for the roof plane, I then use the same 5mm packer to scribe a notch mark where the block sits on the wall. These pencil marks will act as a guide of how much material I need to remove from the block for it to sit flush with our roof. I've clamped the block to one of my sawhorses for stability, then use a handsaw and chisel to remove the 5 to 6mm of material needed. I make a series of cuts 5mm deep with my handsaw. This helps me keep an accurate depth when I remove the material with the chisel.
Let's get out, we can leave this city. Let's drive to the open air. Yeah, the countryside is so pretty, with the wind blowing in your hair. We can look back someday, baby, don't you understand?
After all the carpentry is complete on the double-length blocks, I place them under our rain shelter for painting. While I'm waiting for the paint to dry on our blocks, I return my attention to the new black rafters we laid on the beams. I'm adding heavy galvanized brackets with 12mm bolts to help hold the rafters in place with the heavy wind loads they'll be experiencing. After clamping the bracket into the correct position, I drill pilot holes for the screw thread bolt that's going to go into the hardwood laminated beam. I go to extra trouble to make sure the pilot hole drill bits are the correct size for the thread on our bolt. But if the pilot hole's too small and I have to over tighten it, you can snap the bolt head off in the bracket, which is what we don't want to do.
Hey darling, can I tell you what's been on my mind? Sick and tired of the 9 to 5 in the city light. Hey darling, we could get out of town, see the beautiful world around, wanna see it now. Pack our bags and get in that car, leave a little note and we'll drive real far.
As part of achieving an eaveless roof and wall edge on the lower wall of our studio, I'm installing these unpainted 70 by 45mm blocks along the edge of the rafters. They don't need to be pre-painted like our other blocking material, as these will be buried under the wall and roof sheeting and won't be seen in the final build. With the blocks on the lower wall complete, I move my attention to the other side of our roof structure, where we need to add blocks to the outside edge of the overhanging eave. It wasn't practical for me to build a scaffold for the installation of these blocks, so I'm doing it from the ladder. I'm using the same system I've used to install all the blocks on this roof frame, which is having a scrap piece of timber on the top of the block to keep it in line with the roof plane, and then use my large clamp to add compression once it's in alignment, and then fix it in place with 14 gauge timber screws.
Said, let me tell you everything I've seen, the friends I've made, and then you tell me how you've been. Look a little closer, it's been quite some time. You gotta let me know if I'm out of line. But there's some words that I just wanna hear you say, to put it all straight before this night turns into day, and then I'm on my way. Yeah. Yes, I'm on my way.
Now that the painting is complete on the double blocks, I'm ready to install them over the transition of the inside to the outside on the side of the studio. I'm installing these blocks the same way we've installed all the blocks on our roof frame, which is to have a piece of timber on the top of the block screwed in temporarily, so we can easily and efficiently set the top of the block to match the roof plane of the rest of the framing. Once the block's in place, I use my rubber hammer to make small adjustments to keep it in line with the other blocks. After doing a final check with my speed square to make sure it's completely vertical, I add the two 14 gauge screws on one end. I then add two 14 gauge screws to the other end, but these are drilled in on an angle, like I showed you earlier when we were installing one of the standard roof blocks. With the block secure, I remove the temporary piece of timber on the top of it so I can reuse it on the next block. Because these double blocks have been custom cut to the exact size, I use my large clamp to spread the gap between the two rafters so I can fit the block in easily, and then back the clamp off so it adds compression to the block to keep it tight and make it easy to adjust with my rubber hammer.
Peel off a layer and breathe. Lift up your head and lead. Count the stars up before you leave. Save a kiss, pretty please. Try to reminisce over me. Know that I will cherish your memories.
With the double-sized bridging blocks in place, I'm now adding green painted blocking to create the inside corner edge of our ceiling as we have exposed rafters on the inside. Pre-painting all the framing material for this roof does create some logistical difficulties, but in the end you save a lot of time and labour, and in our case I needed to have the roof frame protected from the weather until I got the sheeting on, so it's worthwhile.
Tonight we'll turn minutes into days, and nothing's gonna make me look away. Peel off a layer and breathe. Lift up your head and lead. Count the stars up before you leave. Save a kiss, pretty please. Try to reminisce over me. Know that I will cherish your memories.
I'm now installing black blocks that are identical in length to the green blocks we just installed. This will create a false rafter on the outside of this wall that matches the rafter layout for the whole roof. The other rafters in our roof frame have to span from the low wall to the high wall, but this rafter lays along a supporting wall, so that's part of the reason why I've chosen to frame it this way. By reversing the block layout, we've added a lot of strength between the transition of the inside to the outside of our roof. With the framing complete for the transition from the inside to the outside of the studio, I complete the blocking for the outside section. These blocks have been pre-painted black so it matches the underside of the awning in the finished build. Although all the standard blocks for our roof frame are measured at 554mm, this doesn't always work out to keeping the roof square in the real world. Due to the variations in the thickness of the rafters, sometimes I have to make adjustments. I run string lines across the rafters periodically to check that they're lying straight and square. If the rafter starts to bow out slightly, I trim a millimetre off the next set of blocks down to 553, and this keeps the next rafter square and plumb. Because our outside section of the roof frame is going to be vulnerable to uplift due to strong winds, I've added bracketing to all the points where the rafters connect into the hardwood beams. I've used a combination of standard sheet metal roof ties and heavy angle brackets with bolts. With most of the roof frame complete, it's time to start adding some of the sheeting material. I'm using 6mm marine ply, which we're pre-painting before installation. The plywood panels will become the ceiling in the final build and be seen from underneath. So we're painting one side with clear polyurethane and the other side with black paint to protect it from the weather.
You master how to simplify. You turn rain into a blue sky. When the wind blows and the windows are closing, you let the world know what has been has been.
Whilst Whilst I'm waiting for more of the ceiling panels to be painted, I'm going to finish some of the details off on our false rafter. I'm filling and sanding the screw heads, then doing some touch-ups with the black paint we're going to be using for all the exterior of the building. Because of the clear polyurethane finish on the bottom of our plywood ceiling, it'll be a lot harder to add black paint later. Here I'm adding a small piece of 190 by 45 to create the tail of our false rafter. Because this is such a small piece of wood, I'm using liquid nails glue in addition to screws to secure it in place.
Sipping coffee under the apple tree, this gentlemanly. Well, you're a good man, quite the best man, a real fine man. When the wind blows and the windows are closing,
with the tail of the false rafter secured, I'm now installing the head of the false rafter. I've set up a temporary platform to hold it in place whilst we secure it into the framing. After checking with my tape measure that it's sitting on a 600 centre that matches the rest of the rafters, I secure it with a clamp and then install the blocks either side of it.
I'm gonna let the past be filled with smoke, and I will try to fix what has been broken, and take the weight off my shoulders, cause I know yesterday ain't coming back. I'm gonna let the past stay in the cold. I will listen to the ocean, let its unsaid words be spoken, and I'll let my mind be carried by the waves. Oh, I will open up my eyes so I can see the light. Oh, and I'll try to spread my wings so I can fly.
I only have limited space for the preparation of the marine ply ceiling panels, so the plan is to install them as they're painted and prepped. I'm now ready to install the last rafter that sits on the end of the roof frame over the two posts we installed. I start by pre-installing some heavy steel brackets that'll help secure it to the roof frame. I'm using 12mm bolts to attach the angle brackets to the rafter. These are going to sit on top of the hardwood beams that are attached to our posts.
Breaking feedback, unless I'm gonna stay right here.
After getting some assistance to secure the last rafter in place, I double check that it's aligned with the rest of the rafters, use my clamps to hold it in position, and then bolt it to the hardwood beams.
One way, gonna lay down, be still, won't waste another tear. Wait till it disappears.
With the final rafter securely in place, I add the last of the blocking to complete our roof frame.
If you have love, you wanna give me some, and now you wait for someone else to come. Oh, it's sad, but it feels right. Are we just hallucinating now? This is the final, I just take a bow. While it all falls apart, 'cause you can't win them all. Oh no, oh no.
the next episode as we add the OSB sheeting to our walls and the membrane that'll keep the studio waterproof.
Could you hide